Welcome everyone to this morning's Dharma talk. My name is HoGen, formerly known as Sokuren, formerly known as Jill Donberg. I was asked to give the Dharma talk today by Sokuzan. He is recovering. He had a minor episode last night, but he's safely in the hospital today. Hopefully returning home soon. And he is accompanied by Ondo and Unyo. I want to thank everybody for your generosity, to the Sangha for your service, for your dedication to the teacher, to the Sangha for your contributions, and for giving me the benefit of the doubt today, sitting in for Sokuzan. The first thing I'd like to address before going into my topic today is how valuable this Sangha is as a platform for us to find our own voice. And as we've seen, even through the teachings of the old, there are people who saw the truth and could not say even a single word or had no students. They may have been great teachers, but for whatever reason, they could not find the words to speak. And where does that leave this student? I think we all just come to this with a genuine heart to practice and to just function where we can. And that can be very simply like printing out a sheet that took like 8 tries. Whatever shows up in front of us, that could be the way. And so that leads into what I'd like to talk to you about today. And I appreciate your questions. The topic of today's talk is a small line out of a chant that we do during our services called the Hokyo Zanmai. It's translated as the Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi. And it's an old song, an old poem from China. So it was written in the classical Chinese characters. And the line that I chose today was, "Ministers serve their lords." And from just the looks of it, why I like this, that it's a very functional statement in a song that is filled with a lot of metaphors and areas that are just difficult to comprehend with the mind. But ministers serve their lords. That's something that we can look at from a relative situation. What does it mean as a minister to serve a lord? What does it mean to serve? And I'm saying this in light of this upcoming opening of Karma House, which is the platform through which we hope as a community will serve our community, our Battle Creek community. I'm saying this with a questioning heart of what does it take to be a servant of others? And how does this model of Sokuzan encourage us and lead us by example? Ministers serve their lords. The area that I wanted to print out was actually the Chinese character, and I wanted to look at that word serve. That Chinese character has a few different definitions. Another word for serving is offer, receive, respect, revere, follow, dedicate, to receive with both hands. Sometimes the teacher appears to the student in a way that is confusing in a way that we're not quite sure how to receive or if it's a workable situation. And I'm reminded of a time when I was practicing in a different meditation center. I was young, in my 20s, and there was a teacher that in that circle was known to have been practicing for very long hours. And we were standing in the buffet line, and she was talking, and I was behind her. And as you know, in some of these meditation centers, you only eat 2 meals a day, so everybody's really hungry. And I thought, doesn't she see how hungry I am? With all of her awareness, doesn't she see that I am starving and she's sitting there talking and talking and talking to this person across from her? Like I lost some respect for her at that moment because she was functioning in a way that I thought wasn't appropriate for a teacher that had such strong awareness practice. But of all the things I remember, that sort of comes through as perhaps one of the stronger memories. And there were beautiful memories there too, but in the sense that her behavior wasn't the teacher at the time. It was my own mind showing me the greediness, the opinions, the criticism, the judgment. It was a mirror to the vastness of the ego that can present itself in the face of a very, very raw and personal situation that just arises in front of us. So to me, when I think of a minister serving the Lord may be the teacher, but the Lord may also be the situation that presents itself in front of us. We may be serving our own minds at times by receiving that mind. We may be serving our own bodies at times by receiving the needs of the body. We may be receiving the hot water that's burning our hands. It could be any number of things. We're not talking about a hierarchy of a boss, of a tyrant, and a slave. Ministers serve their lords. In the next line, children obey their parents. I have a child. He doesn't obey me. But what shows up for me in this statement, children obey their parents, is the way that we work together, that there's harmony between our communications. He reveals to me in his own temper tantrum, in his own states of anger and happiness, exactly who and what he is without any hidden agenda. And as a parent, hopefully in a healthy relationship, that parent cares and intends for that child to grow up to be a full adult. But they dance together. Even though he does not obey, there's still a form of communication, a form of receiving that is so tender and precious and intimate that we hope happens not just with our children, but with what's arising in our relationships. So to end, I want to read one small section out of this interpretation, a commentary on this section of the Hokyozanmai, which reads, directly attain the way of Lord and minister in cooperation and the spirit energy of parent and child in harmony. Are there questions? Shoto.
So allowing meditation is talked about with a lot of importance in the practice, and my perception is service to others a part or another kind of awareness practice or training, and if so, what does that teach us, bowing?
It's interesting you asked that because I did search for the word service in a lot of different areas. What is that word in Pali? I found it, but I could not find specific words that related to that except dana. There are so many, there are many references in the Pali Canon specifically about serving your parents and their giving birth as being a debt that is that cannot be repaid. And there's old filial references in Confucian literature about parents and serving one's parents. But serving in general, for me, it relates to the dana paramita as much as I could find in that area of generosity, of giving, and how that may naturally arise more and more as we see. I want to say something about the self, but it just doesn't, it, it wouldn't, doesn't feel right in my mouth. We look at service sometimes as feeling better after we serve. And as Junshu and Yinlong discovered yesterday, they served this community all day yesterday, and Yinlong couldn't walk afterwards. There are areas of receiving which are deeply troubling and painful. And service can be without any obvious payment. And yet, it is the first paramita if they are in order. Samadhi or meditation is the last. It seems as though if we're going to function as community, we begin by just naturally receiving what is, well, just begin by serving whatever is presenting itself in front of us, beginning there, and watching the way we want to turn away from that in order to serve other lords. Perhaps lords that are more rooted in ourselves. Yoga. Jishin, please.
Jishin bowing. Thank you for mentioning the other lords, because listening to you, your beautiful words, what came to me is how often do we actually serve the Lord of materialism? How often we do it in our community and face now the situation of deep, deep crisis as I see it. So how can we, with that dance and communication you mentioned, become more committed to seeing our serving of to the Lord of materialism in our community? Bowing.
As much as I want to create an army of servants, it's just, this is an awareness practice on so many levels. And it's so important for us to see the way that we turn away, that we see the way that we want to hold on to things. I don't know if that is going to ever, I don't know if that needs to be gotten rid of. Just as Sokuzan says, it becomes a smaller voice, and the call of the moment of whatever is arising in front of us is suddenly much more present to us than the smaller pulls of other lords, and perhaps not. It's more about awareness than improving. Do you have more in that area, Jishin?
Jishin bowing. Yeah, I think it's kind of endless what is coming to me in this area now. But I would like to ask you, how do you see Sokuzan? As I see him as a server to us. I see him as a Lord who is actually a servant. How do you see his serving and love towards our Sangha? Bowing.
I see it in his actions and I see it in his words. I see how he's housed every single one of us on some level, put a roof over our heads. I see how he's fought endlessly, not fought, but considered endlessly how this mandala can remain functioning, even by asking if he should leave. I see how he's shown up for me over and over again, even while I'm yelling at him. I see how he has encouraged me to find my own way, to see the truth for myself. And you may see his fight. You may see his fight and you may see his fire, especially online. But what I see in the Hojo is him sitting in front of people for years and years and years, listening, 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 failing, failing, watching people spin out of their mind and not saying a single word. Udao.
I think one of the translations for serve was receive. Is serving receiving?
Yes, I think it is, but the context of that word receive is like getting a gift. When in actuality, it seems more and more like receiving is actually about feeling or sensing or like eating. It's like, I'm going to serve you cookies. No, I'm going to serve you some serious discomfort that is emanating from people all of the time. There's a chant we do where it says, eat it as your food, oh great protector. Did I get that right? Eat it as your food. So if serving is eating whatever's receiving as your food, you're going to be eating rotten fish as much as you're going to be drinking delicious aged wine from France. The rainbow of phenomena that arises in this world, there you don't get to choose, and you. But the practice is to intend to see, to intend to receive whatever is presenting itself as it presents itself, as it changes. Shodo.
So bowing, that example and the line I really resonated with, where I think that, and my question is about this, why do we think that someone being aware of something means that they would function differently or correct what they were doing? Bowing.
Absolutely. We repeat that again in a different way or as a question so I sort of spaced out while you were talking about that.
Just to phrase it another way. Does awareness have anything to do with correcting or functioning differently, or using the awareness to make choices out of them, Bowing?
I think when I started practice, awareness was very much about it being excited to see more of this world and to open up the present moment so I could see more color and perhaps get some special skills and hear the words of the dead. So yes, there was this gaining mentality that was very enticing and perhaps that kept me on the path for quite a long time. But that's not how it shows up to me anymore.
Sort of Bowing, that's like Sogazan's teaching, always about awareness. Does that include less awareness, more awareness? Bowing.
It, I'm hmm. I'm beginning, I'm in an area of practice at this moment where I don't know anymore where awareness is even operating. So initially it was awareness was operating in this tiny segment where I could hear, taste, feel, touch. There was something arising in the sense doors. And now with Sokuzan's teaching, the practice is intended to work not only in the places that we see, but in the darker areas that we don't see, where we aren't able to measure awareness, where concentration doesn't mean I'm able to follow my breath for 1 to 2 minutes. Concentration now is, I'm not sure, it's gone. And that's okay.
Shadow bowing, how are daydreams and falling asleep awareness going?
You've mentioned this before, this time in the morning where you are waking up and you're watching yourself remember who and where and what you are. So that is an interesting boundary where you're cognizant of what we would call like not knowing, and suddenly cognizant of you reassembling your identity as you wake up in the morning. I'm not sure how you'd call those two different kinds of awareness, or is there two different kinds? Thank you. Oh. I've got a few more minutes.
Kayun,
Oh, Kayun, please.
so you used the example of your frustration with the previous teacher showing you your own mind. And I'm curious, I've certainly had that experience myself, but I'm also curious if that's like the end of the road, like just seeing one's own distaste with the teacher's behavior, whether in retrospect we see ourselves to be foolish or not. Does the discriminating awareness that is the fruit of practice ever lead into correcting the teacher? Bowing.
The discriminating awareness ever lead? We finish that again. Does the discriminating awareness ever lead?
Kayan bowing. I was saying that we're in, basically, just to put it in like frank conversation, we're encouraged to sit a lot, and the sitting a lot is said to sharpen awareness. So there could be circumstances where we're like, gee, I was really full of myself and making a demand and I wanted to eat lunch, but the teacher was talking, isn't that interesting about my demands? But then sometimes the teacher's actually behaving in a way that may be negative. So does the discernment that is sharpened on the cushion ever show up as correcting the teacher? Bowing.
There's so much there, Kayun. Gosh, I feel like I could spend a lifetime alone with you on the moon. Oh.
I can bowing. I mean, at this point, that's seeming more attractive than some other options. So, like, I'll also just add, like, obviously, the Dharma air has left. There's like abstruse conversation that we get through Dharma talks online. It's ongo, so mostly normal lines of communication are shut down. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. And as a close student, I just sort of feel like I want to know from you, who is bravely taking the teacher's seat and who I've also heard might be the new Dharma heir, to talk a little bit about what the student's role is in actually seeing deleterious, negative, though it may well be relative behavior, and saying something about it. Anything in that area, I think, would be very appreciated by me, and I'm sure others as well. Bowing.
I would like to just read the line after this one that I chose, and I'm going to try and circle around your question as best I can. But the line that follows this question is, practice secretly, working within, like a fool, like an idiot. And you used words in your questions like strengthening awareness and discriminating wisdom. And these are still concepts that feel to me as though we are trying to get some grasp on this reality. We cannot distill this reality into a tiny box. And that is something that Sokuzan is very clear about. We are looking at this he is looking at this from a very, very big perspective. And I am, along with many others here, lost in the different emotions that are arising from different Sangha members, from my own interior dialogue. I sit with fear, I sit with anger, I sit with all sorts of stories. And at the moment, I am completely dumb. And that feels like service to me. That feels like I am being as genuine as possible, being lost in this chaos. Other times I feel paralyzed. I am not a beacon. I am a practitioner, and I am dedicated to the practice. And if you sit down in front of Sokuzan and speak with him directly, he is receiving this just as much as we are. He is just as strong as I've ever seen him. He said, I don't have his exact words, but he said, if you are fully receiving what's in front of you, you won't know if you're serving. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what it means to not know. Go ahead, Shoto.
Bowing, as someone who is a monk and who is here, do you honestly feel like you know more about what's going on than people online?
No. Thank you for asking that question. I had the opportunity to sit with Sokuzan yesterday for about an hour, and it's different for everybody. We're all practicing with our own minds, and I feel like he is still doing that, working at pointing us in our own minds so that we have our own authority. I don't feel controlled. I personally do not feel like he has misled me in any way. And I sometimes I just sit and cry because it's a very, so I can't lead you, Kayun. I'm sorry if I just have to point us back to working within and um, asking those questions for yourself and receiving those answers for yourself. Please continue.
Ian Bowing. Well, I'm just curious. I'm very interested about this area that you brought up about how the teacher leads by example and how that could be interpreted that whatever the example is a teaching. But just because we're receiving our personal reaction, our own interiority, and working with that, there's some behavior which is talking too long before lunch and making me annoyed, and then other behavior which appears as like cruelty or disrespecting your spouse in public. And so I can understand how both of those could be a mirror of my mind. And I could certainly reflect on the way that maybe I've disrespected people in my own life in public and get a lot out of that. But it doesn't change the fact that the teacher is still doing something that has relatively negative immediate connotations. And I'm just wondering if in the scope of practice, there isn't room to move outside of the realm of looking like a fool on the inside and looking like a fool by maybe being wrong and having a talking to the teacher about it in public instead of keeping everything secret in the hojo and then turning everything into some problem that I have with not receiving bowing.
I feel like this could be a conversation Uh, I don't know how to respond to this. I don't know how to respond. Kayun, I'm really sorry.
Kayan bowing. I'll just simplify it. In theory, could the receiving then lead to some action that is perhaps questioning the teacher's behavior? Bowing.
What's sticking in my head is this small part of what you said, which is the teacher is doing what the teacher is doing. We have no idea what the teacher is doing. You have no idea, not to be critical of what you're doing. None of us have any idea of what we're doing in this area of the teaching of, as being genuine. Of all of the teachings that Sokuzan is an example for me, it is that he is unapologetically himself. I don't think he can explain what himself is. I don't think he would. But he is giving us permission to be genuine. He is giving us permission to be angry. He is giving us permission to kill somebody if we have to. He is. I have lived with a practice. I lived with a practice of just be aware, with in a way that was restraining, in a way that was that made this energy small, of obeying and following. And his teaching is very much about trusting the awareness without clamping down on who you think you should be, without limiting whatever wants to come out and through you, through your own personal judgment of yourself or whatever limitations you place on yourself. Shoto?
My experience living here, and this is not to say that this is even close to what Kayu's talking about as far as like the weight of the content. But sometimes Sokuzan has like intentionally left people out of stuff because it doesn't pertain to them situationally. And I know that's been difficult for me, but have you had something like that show up here where like Sokuzan knows that he's excluding you and that's just what's happening, and how you've worked with that, or what showed up bowing?
I don't feel like I'm an authority in this area on how this place operates or how Sokuzan operates. I'm actually the youngest monk. I'm the monk who's lived here the shortest period of time. So how and why and what and what is operating here, I don't feel like these are questions that I can answer or comment on. I'm sorry. I I practice, I practice and I watch, and I don't feel like there is anything in this direction that makes me say, Sokuzan, you need to leave. Instead, I see a lot of misunderstanding of what Sokuzan is and does. Yes.
Natsumi bowing. How do external forces of control, expectations, keep us from seeing and living the truth?
Okay, I'm going to come back to that question because I want to, but is there anything further from you, Kayun, before I continue to drive over your questions with my own truck?
Kayun bowing. I mean, you just used the phrase what he's doing again after kind of correcting me for using it. So I just want to point that out. And what I'm referring to is not motivation, but I'm literally talking about doing as in discernible, perceivable behavior. Like, I don't know what if someone's like chopping vegetables and cuts the tip of their finger off, I don't know what they did that for some other reason than their finger was in the way of the knife. So that's not what I'm referring to. And I understand, I feel I've been not boasting, but I've been a student long enough to understand, at least obliquely, his teachings about not knowing. And so I can understand that he might like be having a sexual relationship with one of the students and his wife doesn't like that. But like, and I'm not here to even comment on that. I have no moral judgment about that. But there's like obviously ancillary hurt feelings and confusion about that. And so I guess my question is like, shouldn't some care be taken about the the hurt that's arising as a result of that? And it just seems like what he wants is like overrides, and that obviously that's a story on my part, but it seems like what he wants to have happen overrides like the relative hurt feelings, which might from the overarching view of ultimacy be empty of phenomena, but for just getting through your life it seems sucky. So I guess what I'm asking about the doing is not in questioning motivation or blaming, but when there's obviously someone being hurt, even if it's by their own confusion, can this be addressed directly by the Sangha? Bowing.
Yes, it can and it will. And it's in the midst of being addressed. I know that it is being brought to the board, and it will be looked at very clearly, and I will encourage that this conversation be continued.
Thank you.
Mark Bowing. This reminds me of in 1972, I watched Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche drink about a case of alcohol during a one day of lecturing and talking to a bunch of people. And I think it was well known through his Sangha that he drank quite a lot and smoked a lot of cigarettes. And I don't think it affected his ability as a teacher. I don't think anybody felt inclined. I mean, his students handed him his drinks and cigarettes, and you know, I just don't. I don't think that personal behavior detracts from the teaching of somebody like Sokuzan. Bowing.
Jishin Bowing. I just would like to, first of all, I would like to say in response to what your response, HoGen, to me before, even though I'm online, I perceive Sokuzan's behaviors and responses to the students as an expression of love, compassion, and devotion to all of us. And as Mark just said, I think that we are beyond, we have no right and no business to judge Sokuzan and his behavior. And I don't even understand why people who follow his teachings for so long and see the depth of it, that would dare to go into that path. It's extremely confusing to me. So how do we serve the Lord in which
you serve the Lord by looking at what's arising in front of you right now without turning it away, without blaming. If you're angry at Sokuzan, bring that to Sokuzan. In
Okay, I
the
haven't,
rawest form. If you love him, bring it to him. That's how we serve the Lord.
I, I haven't finished my question. How do we serve the Lord? How do we serve the teacher? If we yell at him, if we are arrogant towards him, if we are aggressive towards him, knowing that all of this is the teaching. Bowing.
I yelled at Sokuzan at one point. I recorded it on Zoom because it was virtual, and I am afraid to go back. And you know what he did? He said, I'm sorry, blame me. I'm sorry.
Fishing bowing. What did you learn from it? Bowing.
That he, I can't put that into words, but it's an encouragement to me. And I feel like I just have a few more minutes to express something. It's one thing to bring Sokuzan anger toward the content of what's arising and say, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be clear about this. There is something very precious in having a Lord or a teacher. I don't know if you're going to have another opportunity to really reveal the negativity in what that's arising within you in a context such as what is being offered here. Just give me a moment. You can go to him and blame him for what would be perceived as a wrongdoing. But you can also go to him with that blame and with that anger and offer it to him. There's a huge difference between bringing blame to Sokuzan and bringing your raw anger to Sokuzan. I'm not sure if that can be any more, if that can be clearer. It's almost as though it's a practice of not identifying with the anger or with the emotion that's arising. You can go to anger you can go to Sokuzan with your passion. You can go to Sokuzan with your sexual intensity. You can bring, I don't mean to be crass here. I am not saying I've done that, but I'm just saying you can bring him any raw content that is arising in your mind, and you can offer that to him. That's a very advanced offering. You can give him Dana. You can bring him coffee. You can offer him a gift. Second. Yes, Sukansu.
You're now bowing maybe on a wider level instead of picking particular things. Are we talking here about a crisis of doubt? And especially when we see that the teacher is a human being and that we see some afflictions arising. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I think doubt follows us throughout our practice in ways. That's not to say you don't look at whether or not something is occurring that you may find needs attention, as Kayun is encouraging us all to do. But we're also simultaneously working within and seeing how possibly things are turning us away are causing doubt. I don't know if I feel like I was zapped by electricity right now. Yes, sorry, but yes, doubt. Thank you for bringing that up.
Is Chazon leaving an act of Donna?
I can't speak for what the relationship is between Jason and Sokuzan. That is their business. I can't speak about the relationship between Ondo and Sokuzan. That is their relationship. I can just speak to the relationship between Sokuzan and I. I can have judgments about what is going on in those relationships, but I can't say that I know. Yes.
Having said that, is Chazon stepping away an act of generosity? Bowing?
Jason is functioning. That's all we're asked to do, is that I would say every action that occurs in this world is an act of Dana. It's another opportunity for us to look at the way things trigger us or the way things don't trigger us. So yes, it is. And I'm also deeply sad and deeply angry. Mozuku.
Zucca, the phrase "get your own authority" to me seems very fruitional. I think it is kind of a fruitional teaching originally. With a line like "ministers serve their lords," how on the path can we work with authority when we don't fully understand "get your own authority" yet?
I feel like you are a really good example of a monk that can speak to that question better than I can. I don't feel like Sokuzan has taught me in the way of being a strong authoritarian figure. My relationship with him is very much more like a father. And I feel like his relationship with everybody is different. Sometimes it is more of as an authority. But he doesn't do that until he's watched somebody for sometimes actually for seconds, but most of the time it's for many long years. And he watched Chazon for many, many long years. And they contributed immensely to this Sangha. I just was looking at pictures of Chizan scraping paint off of inside the Karma house, the hours and hours and hours of dedication that he poured into this mandala are incredible for such a young adult.
Well, Zucca, you bring up a great point about Sokuzan, but I think I meant the question just generally, even among Sangha as monks. You once said that you couldn't, you seemed frustrated about it, but you said, "I can't even use my shuso position on you." So I still feel like you can speak to the question of authority. How do we work with authority before we fully understand the teaching, "get your own authority"?
I think we can work with that by seeing how little authority we actually have in this dynamic, which shows up in Sangha all the time. How interactions and chemistries occur that are beyond our control, how outbursts occur that are beyond our control. I think as Americans, we can be so sensitive about authority, but from my perspective, we are so ill-equipped to move with the current that we could probably be best served by looking more closely at having an authority figure. A lot of us graduate from college and maybe have a boss, but like we don't really like our bosses and we don't really see them as an intelligent authority. We don't typically have intelligent authorities that may help guide us into our own voices, into our own authority. So I would say receive all the ways that we are actually out of control. Yes.
Was it good bowing? Thank you. Do we have any responsibility as a Sangha, as a community, for the confusion that might arise or the misunderstanding that might arise around authority or hierarchy? And I mean, I want to not be too abstract. When I first moved here, I tried to do what I was told. I was afraid that if I didn't, that I would be excluded from the community. So I made some decisions that I think weren't particularly healthy, trying to do what I was told. So how do we really work with authority in an intelligent way? What is our responsibility as a Sangha for that? If knowing that most of us don't fully understand, get your own authority.
I'm sorry that that was what arose for you when you moved here. I think we begin by communicating with each other, and regardless of what someone is bringing, that is its own, that not demands, but that, yeah, it does. It demands our attention, no matter what. I'm sorry, I don't know how to go into that area other than just listen. Yes.
When as Sangha members, we are in a position of authority, what is our responsibility when we see ourselves telling somebody, whether it's another monk or a visitor or somebody, what to do, giving them direction?
I don't see myself as in a position of authority as a monk. I see myself as being needing more help than the average human, needing more practice, needing more glue, seeing how difficult it is to do this alone. As far as authority in this community, the only authority I see is Sokuzan, and he's given permission by us being his student. As soon as we're not his student, he has no authority.
Show bowing. I found it important for myself, the phrases or the words that Sokuzan uses in the structures here. So we don't have officers, we have functionaries, and we don't have a chain of command. We have a line of communication. And can you say how looking at it as a line of communication is different than authority or a chain of command? Bowing.
Yes, if you sit in these meetings that we have as functionaries, if you sit in them, song as with Sokuzan included, you'll see him asking, what do you think? What do you think? Going around the circle, including everybody, asking for help. Please help me. I can't do this alone. There's just so much communication. Losing that thread, but is there more there?
Shadow buying, just again, back to the, when these functionary positions started showing up, which was basically Chiazon kept trying, this is my perception, to be done with the role, and Sokuzan would just give him a new, more important role. He just kept getting roles after roles, and the functionary positions kind of came up out of that. And just the fact that it's communication based and not authority based has been important. Just anything you could say around that, I personally would find rich.
Again, I don't see the functionary roles, like as you're inferring, it's Sokuzan at one point said, Chiazon is no longer the Tsukansu. He's no longer functioning as a functionary, so it's my time, it's my turn to work with him, and to be basically the world. When you enter a position of a manager here, you begin to interface with the Sangha and see how confusion manifests in any one of the 20 people who are living here. And it's a valuable experience to sit down and see how little communication can happen at times. And to call on all of your communication strategies you've ever learned since you were a child, in order to work together, because ultimately this is just about sitting. This is the functioning of this community is about training your mind, and how much drama goes into the intention of training your mind, creating just walls for us to sit in front of and chants in which to speak, which we don't even know the meaning of. And if we boil it down to a very simple thing, we're just trying to train our minds, and yet just a cloud of all sorts of drama arises up out of that, and he sits down, Sokuzan sits down and interfaces with that all day and all night, whether it's through texts or whether it's through the hojo, through interviews, through us banging on each other and fighting. I mean, it is a racket here. I don't want to do that. And what is he receiving? Just garbage. He's not sitting with someone holding up a flower and chuckling. It is day and night him receiving suffering. And I just found it interesting that once Chiazan graduated through those functionaries and decided to step away, Sokuzan said, "Now it's my turn. I will be the world that he," and I can't put words in his mouth, but it almost appeared as though the functionaries were the catalysts in which we could look at our minds through the Sangha, direct interface with Sangha. Not about authority, all about looking at our own minds with the intention to help others. Thank you very much.
We'll stand and offer the supplication as well as the benediction. Supplication for the long life of Kyo-un Sokuzan.
Namo Tatoshi Roshi in the Soto Zen lineage, Shogyam Trungpa Rinpoche in the Karmakagi lineage, the Order of Immediate Light, Queen Shrimala and the Mothers of Wisdom, all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, ancestors and heirs, and masters of the three times. You are the Vajra-like awareness, manifest for all beings, as a mountain, as the Garuda, outrageous and inscrutable. May that mountain, patient and immovable, be the platform for Buddha activity to flourish in all directions and times. Please remain so that we may awaken into true devotion and fulfill our vow to liberate all sentient beings. Om Ah Hum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hum. May the merit of this penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiro San Ji Shivu Ji Son Bu Sa Moko Sa Moko Oja Oromi. The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.